Hi, this is John Cannings here, and just a few thoughts about the first week and some reflections on the second week that's coming up. First of all, one of the things you were asked to do, and which you did very creatively, was to produce some wonderful adverts about a requirement for IB graduates. And most of you highlighted things like caring, compassionate, lifelong learners, people with the ability to problem solve. And a lot of those qualities, as you know, can come and be developed through CAS. One of the other things which comes across from this, I think, is thinking about the people we know who are IB graduates. A few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of working with two young female graduates from an IB school who've set up their own charity called My Schools. And their aim is to actually create a curriculum for people in refugee camps. And similarly, I've thought about some of the young activists I met who are IB graduates, a conference here in Europe recently on sustainability, and how one of my own ex-students cycled along the Andes to raise money for a Swiss charity that he was involved in. So there are some really good examples of the benefits the IB diploma has given the kids. Then you're asked to look at a number of scenarios and relate those to the learning outcomes. Now, I think one of the things that is often underestimated with being a CAS coordinator is the understanding of each of the learning outcomes. So I think this exercise was quite good in making you think in practical terms about how the learning outcomes apply to particular activities. Then we also looked at a number of CAS scenarios to decide whether we thought they were CAS or not. One of the, I suppose we would describe it as the old favourites, was actually about driving. And driving lessons in themselves don't seem to me to present the possibility of CAS. It certainly doesn't fit into creativity as such. What was good to see, though, was some people like Vera, for example, who tweaked these proposals slightly to see how they could be altered so that they could be CAS. A similar thing we could argue about the things with about the internship. I've had lots of kids that have gone to hotel school and who've been through that and have asked, could I claim this as service for CAS? And my answer has always been no. It doesn't fit into service, and I don't see how it benefits the community. I guess the most contentious one in there was about the deer hunting licence, and this really depends on the sort of cultural context that you're actually working in. Where I live in Switzerland, hunting is pretty limited, and it's basically there just to cull animals, deer, wild pigs, for example, and to get a hunter's license, you have to go through quite a long course about the environment, the use of the gun, and so on. And you have to be 18. So in this context, it could be a service to the community where it's culling people. And I think one of the challenges there is about the local context. In other places, it might be totally inappropriate to have this as a CAS activity. It depends on the local culture. Another thing which came up was about charities and about fundraising. I think we need to be a little bit careful about fundraising, that fundraising doesn't become the only form of service, and that kids don't lose touch with who the money is being raised for, and also how accountable the actual organisation is that's raising the money, or they're raising the money for. So just be aware about that. My own experience of raising money for charities is that the smaller the charity, the more accountable it tends to be, and that you have a better handle on how the money is actually being spent. A couple of things you might consider that weren't in there. How would you feel about your own students being involved in climate strikes? It's a concern for many schools, a legitimate concern for many school students about climate change. So how would you react in your school if the students asked you about that? Or how would you react if they wanted to protest about the government, against the government? Those are things we need to think about very carefully, and particularly the safety of the students involved. So those are a few thoughts about the first week, and particularly in the last part about what's CAS. Next week tends to focus, first of all, on looking at the links there are, or potential links there are, between the three elements of the core, between TOK, the Extended Essay, and CAS. I would argue that there are potentially very strong links between all three, and that's something that perhaps we need to explore and encourage. Then there's quite an extensive look at the CAS stages and what happens when students are planning activities and they're not thorough about their investigational planning and some of the issues that causes. And you need to look in the resources library there for the collection of documents there are for student sample A. There's actually 5 documents there. So I hope you found the first week interesting. I would encourage you to try and post as regularly as you can, because that gives it a sense of dynamism and you get a lot from interaction with the other participants in the group. So I look forward to reading your posts for week 2, and have a good week. I might add, it's where I'm speaking at the moment in Zurich in Switzerland. It's extremely hot at the moment. We have temperatures still in the 30s and it's nearly 9 o'clock at night. So I wish you well wherever you are. Stay well. Take care. Bye.